Right, welcome back. Bash plate number 16. There it is. That's dry now. Now it's not totally flat. I made sort of a lot of mention of this being totally flat. I don't know if you can kind of see, but I don't know if it shows if I do that. It's not flat by any means. It's a long way from flat. But to get that absolutely mirror smooth, you'd need quite a thick skin of filler that you then flat back. And I don't want to go there. The only reason is that it doesn't need to be that perfect. It can be. It's perfectly possible. You've seen how it's done. But I've got the ripples out, the obvious little dimples that would have shown up a mile away. But it's going to be in some thick product when this is done. The Plasti Dip is an experiment. There's been great loads of chat on that, great loads of feedback. I thank you for that. But the simple principle for this is that in the next, however long it takes, this is going to be body worked up to a level where it's in properly cured, finished, ordinary, regular, common garden automotive paint. And that will be allowed to dry probably for a week or so at least before I get anywhere near it with Plasti Dip, because of the pulling, gripping qualities of Plasti Dip. And I'm also told by those who know, those of you who've had experience of it, that the chemical mix of the liquid or the carrier fluid of the Plasti Dip is a form of thinners, and effectively that will bond with any thinners that's left in there, and it will grip so tight it will never come off without pulling that paint off. And I don't want that. I don't want to have to do everything again. So I've got these test tiles done for that reason, purely because it's easier to do it that way than have to redo that. And today is just a case of whacking some black over this. I'm going to flat it down a bit more. It'll get more block sanding, but if I block sand that, I'll just go through the bare metal, and then even if possibly start knocking filler away that I don't want to knock away. So that's just going to get a very light sand, very, very light, over the top, and just to get a key on it, then degrease. I've got a clever little idea for you for an extremely cheap degreaser that works extremely well. Been doing it for years, didn't think of it. Penny said, have you mentioned this on a video? And I haven't, so I will in a little minute. And then we get some black over it. And it will be kind of 3 thick coats of black as a guide coat. A guide coat is something that you sand back, and when you start to go through it, it gives you a guide as to whether it's flat and whether it's not. It sort of shows you where you're going. Some guide coats, you do them as just a dusting. There's different levels of thicknesses, but I'm going to do that. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to crack on with it. All right, so there we are. Stick around, stay tuned, see what happens. Right, just very quickly going over it. A little bit of 240 grit, dry, just to make a key. I'm not going to get it wet because it will take ages to dry right out of any water or moisture on the surface at all. So just very carefully, literally a light scuff over, that's all this is. Being careful of all the corners and edges. I want that skin of primer absolutely unbreached. I'm not going to bother with the back, there's no reason whatsoever. Be really careful not to go through it anywhere. I think that'll do. That's the key up. Only takes a minute. Just on the flat areas. That'll do. Right, show you a little trick now. Let's show you this. In a minute. Right, going to degrease this and take the dust off at the same time. There's a product in the chemical world called polyamino carboxylic acid. You can play that back because I'm not going to try and say it again. And it's in glass cleaner. Now you can go and buy panel wipe and dust and grease remover and all that stuff. And if you look on the instructions, it contains polyamino carboxylic acid. It's quite simply a deionized or denitronized acid that will ingest or digest, because it's an amino, polyamino, it will digest the grease on the surface. Also, as it's a fluid, it will take away all the dust. Now, I have tried it. I have been using this for years. That was £1 from Euro Car Parts. £1, and there's a litre of it in there, I think. 3/4 of a litre. You go and buy yourself some panel wipe, or God forbid use thinners. You're just going to take the panel paint off if you use thinners because it melts the paint. This stuff, it just takes the dust off, leaves absolutely no residue because it's glass cleaner. Think about it. You clean glass with glass cleaner, you get that squeaky and it takes everything off. What makes glass smear is grease. of any kind. And that's why when you get traffic film build up, your window smears, you put your screen wash in your washer bottle in your car, and when you wash it, your screen goes clear, because in your screen wash is polyamino carboxylic acid, exactly the same stuff as this. Now I know you're going to look it up, I know all you guys are going to look it up, I know guys are going to come and tell me, yeah, but it also contains this. Someone's bound to say, oh, but it contains salt. Look, honestly, I've been using it for about 20 years. And I kind of learned the trick from my mum. My mum told me many years ago, if you're going to clean something properly and get it squeaky, squeaky clean, glass cleaner. It's the best stuff in the world, the clear stuff. And I know it's soaping up in the bottle there. I don't know why it does that, but I guess like soap, that gets your dishes clean as well. Because there's no soap in it as such. If you kind of wash your hands in it, it doesn't, it just rinses off. Anyway, I'm going to just degrease it with this, show you what I mean. See a little bit sprayed on the cloth, not on the job. Just wipe it over. It will not take the paint off. It won't melt the paint. Won't do anything to it. It won't leave any residue of any kind, and it won't affect the paint finish. I've done this so many times. It works, and it's way cheaper than using fancy automotive chemicals, because you've probably got some under the sink in the kitchen. And the trick is just make sure you get it all off and you dry it all completely. Right, today's fun and game centres around two colours. We're going to use black as the base, and then some silver, and then some black on top. 3 colour changes using 2 colours. And the idea being, as I said, we'll be able to use it as a triple guide coat, so I can get this completely flat without using any more filler, because I do believe that thin layers of filler will crack in the long term, especially on a bike that's 900cc twin and vibrates like that does. So, I'm going to heat this up, heat the job up a little bit, and once it's all warm, because obviously it's about, I think it's about 12 degrees centigrade today, so it's nice and mild, but it's very, very damp and drizzly outside, so it's quite humid. Not brilliant for painting, but that's rattle cans in your garage for you. This is not professional painting, don't profess to be an expert, this is just what I do. You can do the same if you like, or you can do something different, but here we are. Going to warm this up, and warm that up, and then get everything laid over. Okay, stick around, stay tuned, let's see what happens. Old hairdryer. Product of buying the DS, a new hairdryer at Christmas, is you get the old one, and they're really useful in the garage. You just use it to dry everything out completely. Don't use a hot gun, and certainly don't use a blow lamp. Just want to warm the metal up because it is so chilly and so damp. Chase all that damp away and dry away any residue whatsoever that might be on this from the work on it so far. That's it. You only want to warm it up to roughly just above room temperature, that's fine. Start laying some on. What I'm going to do on each one as well, obviously the back of this, the underside, it's not going to get seen, it doesn't matter, but it doesn't hurt for it to have as much paint on as possible. Now obviously the front, we've been talking about the plasti dip, so it's going to have loads of protection, but the back, I'm not going to waste plasti dip on the back, it's bloody expensive. So I'll just put, every time I put a coat of paint on the front, I'll put a thick one on the back, which will build up the layers quite well on the inside. Right, I think that will do for now. All those panels done. Now these are going to need about 15 minutes to dry before the next coat, which will be a coat of silver. Clean that off. Right, join me in a minute, we'll get some silver on it. Right, that'll do the job. Put the heater off. Stuck in the thing through. Right, this is, as I said, just a silver layer. To rub through. Get plenty on the edges. I get the light on it so I can see the layers. I'm giving it 15 minutes between coats, because that allows the two different paint materials to dry, flush off properly. It's touch dry after 15 minutes. Right, laid that down just to let it float out a bit. The idea being, put loads on and let gravity float it out, and that's the idea. Try and get it all nice and level. So that dry for about 20 minutes, I think. Come see what it feels like. Time for a brew. Yeah, there we are. It's half an hour later now, and you can see that it's. Let's get some light on it. There you go. You just see, now you get these guide coats on, you can actually see how ripply that is. And how that finish needs an awful lot of work yet. And it's still a little bit wet to the touch there, but it's not going to sag or run anymore. So I'm going to get a coat of black on that now, making the third layer of material. And I think a couple more after that. Little run there, but I can block that out. This is all about getting loads of material on in order to rub off again. Okay, let's set it back up. This paint isn't atomising very well because it's so damp and it's quite cold, but it's good enough, it's going on. It just needs to be on there for the purpose of rubbing off, so it's not important. Obviously the final coats will be a lot better. This is just laying on material for purposes of working on. There we are. Done, right, there we go. We'll get that in a minute. Actually, I'm going to do another two. So I'm going to do another silver and another black, because that will give me 5 layers I can go through when I'm blocking it back to get it absolutely perfect. Why not? Might as well, eh? And I'll make the next 2 coats thin coats. Sacrificial like, you know what I mean? Okay, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I can put some more on. Number 4. That's all the silver done. Right, 10 more minutes because that's a thinner coat, and then the final one. Right, number 5, 5th and final coat. Right, I think that's enough. Okay, you'll let fumes settle a bit. I think we'll call that done. Right, there you can see, looking at that, just want to shine the light on it. You can see how ripply that is now. And that's just, that was flat. When that was in primer, that was completely flat. It's touch dry, but it's not hard by any means. That's going to take probably about 2 to 3 days to cure, even halfway. And as the advice, there we go, as the general advice was to keep this, let this cure as completely as possible before you start sticking stuff to it, then I will do. That is exactly what I'm going to do. So that's 5 layers of paint. See what I've done there? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? 5 layers of paint, alternating colours as you go down through the layers, and then as you block sand with a hard block down through those, you'll start to see exactly how flat it gets, and that will work quite well. And you'll see as it works, it will be wet sanded as well, so it gets a lovely smooth finish, and then it will just be one coat of that black over the top to finish, and leave it for a week. I'm going to leave that. It's time of recording, it's Saturday morning, 5th, and it's 12:30 noon, so middle of Saturday. Now the plastic dip's just arrived, but it's at Penny's work where all the stuff goes, and that won't be able to touch for a while, but it does give me a chance to do the next video, which is to plastic dip the bash plate on the Tiger, ready for the next week's riding around and the big trip up to the Ace and back, which will give it loads and loads of testing and a chance to see if it's going to stand up on the front of this before I go putting it on this. The test tiles have been painted in the same combination of 5 colours, purely because then they're a mirror of this, and when I come to mess around with it, if I'm going to test anything, stick some plastic dip on those test panels, rip it off mercilessly and see if it rips it off the test panel. If it doesn't, then it's safe to work on that and that, sacrificial and all that. Okay, there we go, it's enough of that. Hope you enjoyed that. I've got to leave it now, I'm afraid, for a while. I've got 2 videos in between anywhere near this. This is going to be probably the middle of next week before I go near this. At least, I would say, 72 hours, maybe even longer, just so that that's completely dry before I start sanding it down. Purely because all the paint, if you look in an aerosol can, something like 90% of the contents of an aerosol can is liquid. The solids in there represent a very small quantity of what's there. So if there's 10 millimeters of paint, which there isn't, but if there were, only 1 is actual solids. That's the kind of quantity. And the thinners evaporates away and the stuff shrinks back. So that's going to change the way it looks a lot by the time that's completely dry. So I'll show you when it gets back, see what it actually looks like before we start blocking it out. And once it's blocked and it's done in that, then I can start putting the mesh in, and we are actually looking like we're getting somewhere close. Okay, there we are. Thanks for tuning in to Watch It Always Goes. This has been number 16. Getting there eventually. Okay, take it easy, ride safe, and see you next time.